What's up, YouTube, and welcome in, Bears fans. This is The Lindemann Show, and I am your host, Cody Lindemann. The Chicago Bears have made a move to bolster their offensive line and reunite a player with Ben Johnson, and it looks like the Bears might be heading out of Chicago with their stadium into Arlington Heights. More on both of those coming up in just a second, but before we get to that, I want to remind you to please like, comment, subscribe, and share this show with a friend, another Bears fan who you think would like the content. Liking and subscribing, super easy, both of them. Go down there, just one click for each. One click to like, one click to subscribe. Commenting will require a couple more than one click. It will be a little more work, but I really appreciate every comment you leave. I read every comment you leave. So please let me know whether you think the Bears should stay in Chicago, have a lakefront stadium brand new, or should they move out to Arlington Heights and build their new stadium there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, want to hear your thoughts on the Bears' new addition, offensive lineman Jonah Jackson. He is now going to be joining the Chicago Bears. A quick technical note, he's technically not a Bear yet. The trade can't go through until the new league year, which starts on March 14th. So that's about 10 days from filming. So Jonah Jackson, soon to be a Chicago Bear. In the eyes of the NFL, not yet a Chicago Bear. But in the eyes of us here at the Lindemann Show, he is. So we're going to talk about him right now. And the Bears give up a 6th-round pick in this year's draft to get a starting or potentially starting left guard, Jonah Jackson, picking him up from the Rams. I like that the Bears used a draft pick from this draft. Don't mortgage potential future draft picks. Don't kick the can down the road and say, okay, we're going to compensate this team later. No, use the draft picks you have right now in front of you and get it out of the way. And also, it's a 6th-round pick. Think about the last time the Bears had a big swing in the 6th round and hit with a player who was an instant starter. Yes, of course, a draft pick is going to be cheaper. A draft pick is going to be more control for years. We're going to talk about the Jackson contract here in a second. Obviously, a draft pick would have those legs up, right? That'd be the advantages of drafting someone. But the disadvantages, obviously, you're probably not going to have them start, right? You're going to draft a player who's going to be fighting to make the roster in the 6th round. So I like that you're using a very late draft pick in this year's draft, and you're getting an assumed starter. It is assumed right now he will be the starting left guard for the Chicago Bears when they open up the season in 2025. If not, you got a really solid depth piece, and you got him for really cheap. So either way, really like the Bears move here. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jonah Jackson as a player, what he's done recently. And yes, he was with Detroit for some time, which I'll talk about more. That is him reconnecting with Ben Johnson, as I mentioned in the open. But let's talk first about what he did last year. Last year only played in 4 games, which is a bit of a red flag. Obviously, we can talk more about his talent later, but obviously this is a Ben Johnson trade. Ben Johnson wanted to be back with him. Ben Johnson believes in him. So it's a red flag that he only played 4 games last year, but Ben Johnson is obviously vouching for him, and he does have a lot more starts under his belt when he was in Detroit. So hopefully reuniting with Ben Johnson will give him that boost that he needs to get a lot more starts and play a lot more games under his belt. He did start this season with the Rams, injured. He had a shoulder injury, so he was missing a lot of time early. He was originally signed to the Rams. Last year was his first and only year, it turns out, with the Rams. He was signed to play left guard, but then he lost that job to Steve Avila, I believe is how you pronounce his name. So when Jonah Jackson came back healthy, he wasn't playing left guard because he lost the job. And part of that was probably the fact that he's injured, right? If you have a left guard who's out there and you have 2 guys who are playing equally, It was talked about so much last year with the Bears' consistency on the offensive line. So if you have two players who are equally good, I'm going to try to stick with the consistency on the offensive line. So that might have also hurt Jackson. It's hard to say without being right in that team meeting, without being in the Rams locker room, to really know what it is that kept Jackson from playing and getting more starts than just 4 games. He also was tested out at center, and that just never really worked out. He wasn't a center. Don't know what else to say besides it just didn't work out, right? And I'll say right now, like, if this is, and I don't think it is, but I've seen enough of the Bears to know that sometimes they just do things that shock you. So if this is Ryan Poles' idea of how to fix the center position, I'm going to be A, very upset, and B, dumbfounded, right? He tried to play center, it didn't work. And like I said, I don't think it is, but I am sick and tired of being a Bears fan and hearing about another team's failed project being the Bears' solution. It happens way too often, and I'm tired of seeing it, and I really don't want this trade for Jackson to be the same thing, to be the thing I've seen year after year after year, where the Bears pick up a player who just didn't work out at the last place, and the Bears are like, oh yeah, he's a plug-and-play guy, and he's not, right? Jackson, when you look back past his history, might actually be that plug-and-play guy, but it's definitely not at the center position. So I've talked a lot about what he did besides last year. So let's take a look at it, right? This is his 5th year, or last year was his 5th year in the league. Next year will be his 6th year in the league, obviously. His first 4 years, he was with the Lions, spent some time with Ben Johnson in Detroit. In 2020, started all 16 games, only committed 4 penalties throughout the year, according to Pro Football Reference. So really good. 2021, once again, started 16 games. That's beautiful, right? When you look at like the Bears' offensive line and how much trouble they've had, to hear someone starting 16 games sounds like such a foreign concept. So in 2020 and 2021, started 16 games apiece in each of those seasons. Didn't have his penalty numbers on Pro Football Reference for 2021, but he was averaging around 3 or 4. So I can't imagine he had some sort of blow-up year where he committed like 10 penalties, right? And that's another problem, I think, with the Bears' offensive line. Maybe not so much with recent groups, but definitely in groups of the past, the penalties would just hurt the team so much. So to see a guy who, although once again last year didn't start a lot, has a history of starting a lot of games and not committing penalties, perfect. And who has chemistry with Ben Johnson, the new head coach of the Bears, the new offensive mastermind of the Bears, the new play caller of the Bears, I can't be too upset with the idea, right? Like, the process seems good. Obviously, Ben Johnson went up to Ryan Poles like, hey, this is a guy who we should think about adding. Ryan Poles did, and hopefully it works out. Time will only tell. But moving on, back to how much he played and his penalties. So we said 2020, 2021, 4 penalties in 2020, 16 games apiece. 2022 started 13 games. So not the 16 games he'd been doing before, but still 13 games, pretty decent. You miss a game here or there. It's the NFL. It's bound to happen. I mean, if I had it my way, right, I want him to play every single game, right? Just not going to happen, right? 13 games, I think, is still a very respectable season. I think you're out there for enough games. Obviously, you're going to make an impact when you start 13 games. So not a terrible season. And committed 3 penalties, evidently. So another really good season. 2023 drops down to 12 games. Now you start to get into the territory where it's like, okay, now you're starting to like miss a sizable amount of the season. That's where it gets into like the I'm raising my eyebrow situation now. I'm like, okay, you're out there for a majority of the games. That's great. You're out there for double digits, 12 games, awesome. But like, okay, if it's a 17-game season, you've missed 5 games. You've missed a little over a month, right? 5 games, that's as many games as the Bears won last year, right? Like that can be a sizable amount of the season. And depending on when those 5 games are, it can really make or break a season. So 2023, little cause for concern, but not too much. Commits 4 penalties throughout that year. So once again, a lot of work, a lot of playing time, not a lot of penalties. Always a big fan of that in my offensive lineman and in any player, let's be honest. And then last year, spent a single year with the Rams, only started 4 games. So all 4 games he played in, he started. Once again, I went over what happened there with the injury, with getting beaten out for the job, eventually gets sat, doesn't work out at center. All those things happen, and Jackson only ends up playing 4 games. Commits 0 penalties in those 4 games, so I mean that's the only upside maybe from his tenure with the Rams. But that is over. He will be coming to the Bears, and hopefully will look more like the Detroit Lions type of Jonah Jackson and a lot less like the LA Rams Jonah Jackson. I want to break down his contract a little bit. We talked about it. I know obviously a draft pick is cheaper, and you're going to have more control over long term. This is a little bit different of a situation, and that's kind of the trade-off you make when you want a plug-and-play player. You have to pay them like a plug-and-play player, and you lose a little control here, specifically in this exchange, right? So once again, 1 year is off his deal last year with the Rams, but he did sign a 3-year extension with the Rams back in, I believe it was March of 2024. So what that extension looked like, in total, it was worth $51 million. So a massive contract, a massive extension for Jackson, which if I heard that, and when I did hear that and read that, I was a little concerned. I was like, okay, how much are the Bears going to be paying this guy, right? Did they just break the bank over a player who was sat last year? Doesn't look like it. Does not look like it. In 2025, Jackson has a base contract of $9 million, which is all guaranteed, or will become all guaranteed once the new league year turns over on March 14th. So $9 million base pay, not a terrible idea. One way to look at it is you gave up Walker and Gerald Everett to bring this player on, and a 6th-round pick. Obviously, you gave up the 6th-round pick, but money-wise, you cut Walker, you cut Everett, you saved about $10 million. This guy Jackson, your new left guard, your new likely starting left guard for the Chicago Bears, cost you about the same amount of money that you saved right there. So it's basically the Bears cap before they cut Everett and Walker. So that is just this year. One thing that maybe makes you pause is he does have a lot of incentives built into his contract, and his incentives can be worth up to $8.5 million on top of that $9 million of base pay. So in theory, his cost could balloon up to $17.5 million. So we'll see how that all plays out this year, and we'll see if he gets those roster bonuses, and if he does end up costing the Bears a little bit more. Looks like he might, but we will have to wait and see if he does end up costing the Bears more than just that $9 million of base contract. And then in 2026, his cost is $17 million. Not sure if that's broken down, once again, similar with roster incentives, or if that's just a straight $17 million. But what is notable here is that none of that money, to my knowledge, is guaranteed. None of it at all is guaranteed, which means if you get in a situation where it was a swing and a miss on the offensive line again, it doesn't work out, Jonah Jackson doesn't show any promise, doesn't show improvement, doesn't fix any offensive line issues, you can cut him. Have my understanding, if it's zero guaranteed, then it's zero dead cap space you're using. I don't know that for a fact. That's my assumption, though, that you can at the very least, cut him for a very small cost and move on and try to fix the problem either in free agency next year or with with a draft pick. Hopefully that's not the case. Obviously, hoping Jackson comes in and is a mauler and is a anchor on the offensive line. But you never know, right? The Bears have had some swings and misses on offensive line and in other positions. So you just never quite know. All right. Also, I just want to say this is a great job by the Bears to add a guy, add him before free agency, add him before the draft. Don't let other teams have an ability, don't let other teams have an ability to factor what you're going to do, right? When you go out and get someone before free agency or the draft, you're not waiting for someone else to make a pick. You're not waiting for someone else to come in and pay higher, right? You're not bidding against anyone else. You're just trying to make a trade. Bears did it, so really like that. I like that it shows the coaching staff. When you think about his connection with Ben Johnson, right, it seems like Ben Johnson's like, hey, Ryan, we should go see if we can get this guy for a little. That's exactly what happened. But it's a good job, at least by Ben Johnson. I like that he has that thought to like, oh, let's go out. Let's go see, right? Let's go look on other teams. People who maybe aren't going to be open for free agency. Can we go get them? Can they be, instrumental to our team moving forward? Can they be good additions? Can they bolster a position we need to, right? So I really like that sort of outside the box thinking, that knowledge about the league as a whole. And from what I read, it looks like Jonah Jackson was at the combine during the time of the scouting combine. He was allowed to seek a trade during that time, and the Bears got a trade deal done by today, right? So great work by the Bears to, as we're still winding down from combine info and what all happened there, the Bears already have the Jackson trade lined up and locked in. So I absolutely love that. I think it is great work by the Bears. All right. Bears may be moving to Arlington Heights. Want to talk about that next, but first, before we get there, want to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you are commenting what you think of Jackson now that I've ran through all the info I have about him. Do you think he is the key at left guard? Do you think it was a mistake? Let me know down in the comment section. Please like and subscribe. Liking is a super easy way to support the show. Same with subscribing. Just a one click of the button down there. Please go do that. I would greatly appreciate it. All right. That is enough of that. Let's get back into the Chicago Bears. Gonna shift gears from off the field to where the field will be, right? The Bears, there was some news earlier this week about the Bears in Arlington Heights. My personal opinion is that they might be shifting their focus back to Arlington Heights. That is not what they are saying publicly. They have not said that. Once again, that is my opinion and my take on the situation, right? What the Bears did accomplish, though, or what the Bears did say, what Warren confirmed in a letter to the mayor of Arlington Heights, is that they are going to renew their studies, kind of like feasibility studies, renew kind of. It's hard to really say what they are, but like the first study that they're doing right now is a traffic study, right? So kind of to study the infrastructure, what it looks like, what they're going to need from the community, how they're going to need new roads built, how they're going to need a new electrical grid, and how they're going to need new water lines and electricity, which I already said, but I'll say it again, and how they're going to need lights and security and all this stuff that comes with having a stadium, and of course some of the events the stadium's going to host. The stadium, the entire point of building the new stadium is that you can host things like a Super Bowl, like a Final Four, like massive concerts for huge names, right? So that's one of the entire points of building a new stadium. So all those things need to be worked out. So to get back to the real news, right? Kevin Warren confirmed in a letter to Tom Hayes, the mayor of Arlington Heights, that they are going to renew these studies and that they will be submitting them soon. According to the mayor of Arlington Heights, once again, Tom Hayes, he is expecting for this traffic report to be submitted very soon. To him, that means like a week. Or he said it could happen within the week, right? Something to that effect. So he thinks by the end of this week, this will come out on Thursday. So, sometime late on Thursday or on Friday, Tom Hayes thinks that traffic report can be submitted to the city, which is huge news, right? From the Bears, like, having zero interest, not really talking to Arlington Heights, to like, boom, they could be committing or submitting studies, right, about traffic to Arlington Heights is like a major, by the end of the week, is a major development. The reason the Bears can actually get this traffic report done so fast and get it submitted so quickly is not because they've been doing it, behind the backs quietly, which wouldn't surprise me. Bears have every right to kind of do things off the record, not off the record, but out of the public eye is maybe a better way to say it. But from my understanding, the Bears had started this traffic report and were working on it before they shifted their focus back to Chicago. So they already had most of the study done from the sounds of it, and they had done a lot of work and put a lot of work into the study. So that's why Tom Hayes is expecting it so fast, is because the Bears have already done a lot of work for it, probably just finishing up a few things, and then we'll get that submitted. Arlington Heights is preparing for a traffic consultant to evaluate the study once they get it. So Arlington Heights seems willing to engage with these studies from the Bears. Obviously, I think you have to, right? Going to talk a little bit more about how, like, Arlington Heights may have almost lost the Bears. Maybe they didn't. We'll talk about that more later in this segment. But Arlington Heights, the village board, I think is what it's called, the mayor, all seem very willing to work with and interact with the Bears' information they're providing, which could be a good sign. If you remember, the Bears had issues with the village board and coming to a tax agreement when they first bought the land. I'm not generally like one to stick up for like millionaire and billion-dollar sports teams, but like it seemed a little sketchy, right? It definitely seemed weird when there was a racetrack on a property. It got torn down, and then from my understanding, the property taxes went up. Like, it seems a little weird, right? Like a functioning business, property taxes low. No functioning business, property taxes go up. Seems weird to me. Maybe that's normal everyday business. I'm not a tax person. I don't know how properties are taxed. But it seemed a little weird to me. That was obviously an issue the Bears had, and one of the main reasons I feel that they publicly made the announcement that they were going to go focus on building a lakefront stadium. That problem got solved in December. It was a minor story at the time because Kevin Warren kind of wanted it to be a minor story, in my opinion. He's like, yeah, that's solved. We're going to go build a stadium on the lakefront. Was kind of the vibes I got. So that deal happened back in December. The main sticking point that may have caused an issue or a riff at the beginning, or was a business hurdle at the beginning of this process of possibly building a stadium in Arlington Heights, seems like it has gone away. So good news for any of the Arlington Heights crowd there. Looks like maybe some of these hurdles are being cleared. Looks like the village wants to engage with the Bears. It also, this article I was reading also said the Bears could be looking to submit a financial study not long after they submit their traffic study. So financial study might be coming. I assume, obviously, Arlington Heights would be interested in seeing that, interacting with that, and seeing kind of what the overall financial aspect the Bears value or the Bears project to be coming. And then just a couple things to remember about what Kevin Warren has said publicly and what he hasn't made any amendments to. He wants to have shovels in the ground for a stadium by the end of this year, which is a lofty goal when you don't know where the stadium is going to go, in my opinion, and you want shovels in the ground. Lofty goal. He also, Warren says he still wants it on the lakefront at this time. The lakefront is still the main focus. I don't think that's going to be true for much longer. Sorry, Chicago people who want the stadium in Chicago. I think you're going to have to go to Arlington Heights if you want to see Bears games. I think Chicago was just never really a realistic option. Obviously, the city would have liked that. But I think as soon as Bears bought the Arlington Heights property, the writing was on the wall. There was definitely opportunities to save the Bears. I think if Illinois lawmakers in Springfield would have, said, hey, we're gonna put all this money in, and the Bears said they'd put all this money in, right? And people kind of, the stars aligned, right? I think there was a chance to keep the Bears in Chicago. But I think as soon as the Bears said, we want $1 billion of taxpayer money, I think that's what it was when the story came out kind of last summer, I believe. I think that was the writing on the wall. I think that was the nail in the coffin. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in Chicago. It's not going to happen on the lakefront. So that, and I think a lot of people, I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of people also thought that. So some people obviously think that the focus on Chicago was very legit and that the Bears really had an opportunity to put a stadium in Chicago. I was never really one of those people, but I also didn't think that it was just a total leverage move by Kevin Warren, right? Keeping a charter franchise, the Bears are, in the city that they get their namesake after, right? The Chicago Bears, I think is important, right? I think it's a big move. I think it's something that people want to see, right? Obviously, a lot of Chicago Bears fans do, but I think it's just something that people nationwide might be interested. Like, oh, we're going to go to a Chicago Bears game and we're not going to be in the city to watch them, right? So I think that's something that a lot of people, like I said, would just like to see the Bears stay in Chicago. I was never really on the, it's going to happen in Chicago, but I was never on the full leverage train either. If I'm somewhere in the middle, right? If I'm Kevin Warren and I want to build in Arlington Heights and I go to Chicago and I do all this work with lawmakers in Springfield, local lawmakers, Friends of the Park, whoever I'm doing these deals with, and it's all a leverage play, A, it feels like a lot of work, and B, I don't want you building the stadium if you're not truly going to look at more than just one position, more than just one situation, right? If you are just going to say Arlington Heights is a deal, I'll get them to lower the tax prices because I'll say I'm going to focus over here, but I'm not actually going to look at other somewhat legitimate, right? Could possibly happen, legitimate options. I don't want you building the next stadium. I don't think you have the qualifications to, right? You have to have the willingness to look at this other option, even if it's going to be more difficult, even if it's going to take more public convincing, even if this is going to be way harder. I think you have to be willing to look into Chicago and then say Arlington Heights is probably the main focus, right? And I think it always has been. Kevin Warren, right, can say whatever he wants in front of a microphone. I'm going to believe that Arlington Heights was always the main focus. But if he didn't legitimately look in Chicago, I think that would be poor execution in building a stadium. And the other thing is Adam Hogue, great reporter, beat reporter for the Chicago Bears, he implied on one of his shows recently, CHGO, he implied he had some sort of inside information, right? And he knew for a fact, not reporting, but reporting, right, that Kevin Warren wants the stadium on the lakefront. And I don't blame him. I don't think he's alone. I think, once again, I said it just a few minutes ago. A lot of Chicago people obviously want that. I think a lot of people nationally would want a lakefront stadium. It's a very cool thing to have here in Chicago. And I think that's an okay opinion to have just as a person, right? As a person, I want the Bears in Chicago, right? If you're Kevin Warren, I want to just separate the person, Kevin Warren, and the professional Kevin Warren for a second. As a person, I think it's okay to be like, hey, I want to be in Chicago. I really want to make that happen. But the professional Kevin Warren, in my opinion, needs to know that Arlington Heights is going to be way easier. It's going to be more viable. You're going to make more money because it's going to be all owned by you. Professionally, I think you have to know that Arlington Heights is always the best option. And if you don't, and you still get it built in Arlington Heights and you make the Bears a lot of money, who cares, right? But I think just professionally, that is the best way to go about building a stadium. I've never built a stadium, though. Kevin Warren has. So maybe he knows more than I do, and that's why I'm doing this, and Kevin Warren is trying to build a stadium for the Chicago Bears. But please remember to like, comment, and subscribe as we are wrapping up the show here. The Bears add a piece to bolster their offensive line, and they might just be heading out to Arlington Heights and outside of the city of Chicago. Until next time, for the Lindemann Show, I'm Cody Lindemann, signing off.